So since today is Memorial Day, it's a day for remembering our military and the people that died in that battle for freedom. And since this is a comic book channel, I wanted to do a list of my top 5 favorite wartime comics. This won't really be characters, but more the actual comics. So let's just jump into it and let's get it started. First off, I have at number 5 is the Creature Commandos. Starting this list off with probably the most comic booky of the wartime comic books. You know, Creature Commandos is very much on the borderline of like real military type comic storytelling to like more sci-fi, fantasy comic books that were, they're more traditional. Um, Creature Commandos was basically a team of humans that were experimented on during the war to become better soldiers. Basically, think of it like a really weird super soldier serum that turns you into monsters, and it was really interesting. I mean, it's a book that really shows you what we are willing to do as a people to win on our side of the war. Like these people were willing to be subject to experiments and get mutated into to look different and be monsters in order to be able to get a winning edge on the enemy. So it just goes to show you that how strong people will feel about their country and the side they're fighting on. Very interesting to me in that regard. Next up we have on the list is Frank Castle at number 4. Not Punisher, but Frank Castle, the military man, the soldier, the Marine. Very interesting dynamic with this guy. Obviously he's the Punisher, and he fights criminals, and he's fought supervillains and all kinds of stuff. But in his beginnings, he was just a soldier, or Marine, running through the jungle, fighting the Vietnam War. And it's very interesting. I like that. Like, there's been over the years, there's been enough comics and enough flashbacks to say that he's a wartime character. That he stands on the same mantle as characters like Sergeant Rock and Sergeant Fury. What can you say about the Punisher? What can you say about Frank Castle? He is just a brutal, hardened soldier. So yes. Alright, so at number 3 we have the Unknown Soldier. I've always really liked the Unknown Soldier for its creativity and just its difference from the norm. It's basically a story about a man who gets severely injured, in his face during the war. His face is completely unrecognizable, and he starts wearing these bandages over it. And he basically learns how to become like a spy and become a infiltrator. He learns how to mimic people's voices and becomes basically a master of disguise. And I've always found that concept interesting, that someone who is basically unrecognizable with his own face, he's lost his own identity, so he basically latches on to every other identity that he pulls from soldiers and high operatives that he infiltrates. And it's just a very interesting concept that when you have no identity of your own, you just get lost in the many identities that you steal over the years, and the many personalities you become as part of your allegiance to the war effort. Next up on the list we have Enemy Ace at number 1. Now, yeah, I know what you're saying. An American YouTuber, is putting a German, wartime World War II character at the very top of a wartime list of characters. Doesn't seem very patriotic. Well, whatever. I feel like this is a character that is just shows the scope of war in general, and it's really interesting character. He has some of the best storytelling in wartime comics of this era, and this era was chock full of really good quality wartime comics. So that goes to show you something. Some of the Enemy Ace stories are just so emotional and dramatic, and there's so much meshes behind the stories. It just really shows you how everybody in war suffers. Everybody in war has to make decisions, and everybody in war thinks that they're the good guy. There's really no good guy and bad guy in terms of that. But it's the soldiers on the German side, they're just doing what their country needs them to do, the same thing like we're doing. So I really find that interesting. That's a really compelling idea to me, is that on both sides of the war, they're both fighting to win. They're both fighting for survival most of the time. It's very interesting ideal, and Enemy Ace just totally embodies the struggle of the other side. That whole concept. It's really interesting to me, and I've always really appreciated the character for it. And plus, World War I is a really interesting backdrop that most of the other comics don't focus on. They focus on World War II, but World War I is always. So next up at number 2 we have Sergeant Rock, the leader of Easy Company. Sergeant Rock is easily one of the most iconic wartime characters, just in the general public, kind of view. A lot of people have the debate over if he's better than who's better, him or Sergeant Fury. I think Sergeant Rock is the more interesting character. He's the more superior character in my mind. He's just like, I don't know. He's all in all, he's actually kind of generic in terms of like characteristics and personality traits. But he's still very iconic. He's very stern. He's a very he's a good leader. He's a good soldier. He does what he does what he needs to do to win. Without really sacrificing his own identity most of the time. And it's really interesting, compelling stuff. It doesn't hurt that he's got a great artist and creative team in his original series that was the height of DC war comics. And DC had a lot of war comics. There was a lot of really good titles. Like most of them are on this list. And it's just a testament to how good Sergeant Rock, and how much he stands the test of time as a character. But regardless of the war, regardless of what side, and regardless of who you are, there's always going to be tragedy. There's always going to be fallen soldiers in wartime, and that's what this day is for. It's to remember that, and not to take war lightly. So, just remember that, guys. And have a good rest of your Memorial Day, and see you guys later.